He's that guy, you know. He's that guy in the show. That guy in the show.
Can't wait to dive into this week's That Guy in That Show, because this week's That Guy in That Show is none other than Louis Gossett Jr. Professor.
Yes.
Thank you. Can you please enlighten myself and the rest of the listeners about the talented Louis Gossett Jr.?
You betcha. So Louis Gossett Jr. was born Louis Cameron Gossett Jr. on May 27th, 1936 in Coney Island, New York City, USA. I love Coney Island. And he's still alive at the age of 87. So at school, when he was in school, he was into sports, but he had an injury, so he decided to be in a school play instead. He was in his first production when he was 17, and You Can't Take It With You. He then did Broadway and lots of theater work, and in the early 60s, he was even a talented folk musician in New York City, but his theater and acting work took over. So some of the things Louis Gossett Jr. was in, he was in Roots in 1977, and he played fiddler. He was in Backstairs at the White House, Sadat, Touched by an Angel, Stargate SG-1. He was the voice of Lucius Fox in the Batman animated TV show. He was in Watchmen, the new Watchmen. The Nurses, The Invaders, Dakar, The Bill Cosby Show, The Partridge Family, Bonanza, Alias Smith and Jones, The Rookie, Love American Style, The Mod Squad, McCloud, Petrocelli, I just like saying that, Good Times, Harry O, The Jeffersons, $6 Million Man, Police Story, Little House on the Prairie, The Rockford Files, Ellen, ER, Psych, and Boardwalk Empire, among many, many others. Some really good movies he was in. Officer and a Gentleman, Jaws 3D. Did I say really, really good? Well, okay, never mind. Finders Keepers, Enemy Mine, which is a great film. He's great in it. The Principal, Iron Eagle 2, Iron Eagle 3, Iron Eagle 4, Iron Eagle on the Attack. He was in The Punisher with Dolph Lundgren, Toy Soldiers, Josephine Baker Story, Diggstown, Bram Stoker's Legend of the Mummy, Daddy's Little Girls, the new movie that's out now, The Color Purple, A Raisin in the Sun, The Deep, that's the shark movie that was after Jaws, Finders Keepers, Firewalker, Toy Soldiers, and Diggstown. In anthology TV, he just did a couple, American Playhouse and Saturday Night Live, of all things. Now, he won a ton of awards, and he was nominated for many, many more. He won an Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor for a single appearance in Roots. He was the first Black actor to win an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in Officer and a Gentleman. Gossett won the Golden Globe Award for Best Supporting Actor for Officer and a Gentleman. He was won the Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama for Palmerstown, USA. He won the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Actor in a Motion Picture at the NAACP Image Award. He was, and also the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor in the Josephine Baker Story. And he won a Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Limited or Anthology Series or Movie for Watchmen. That's the new show. So this is interesting. He was the guest programmer on TCM. And for his movies, he selected Blackboard Jungle, Lifeboat, Touch of Evil, and Night of the Hunter. What an interesting group of movies to pick. So my personal memory of Louis Gossett Jr. was, and this is really weird, really kind of silly, but in Officer and a Gentleman, he called Richard Gere's character, whose name was Mayo, his last name was Mayo, he called him Mayonnaise. And to this day, I only saw Officer and a Gentleman once, didn't particularly care for the movie, it wasn't my favorite movie, but I still call mayonnaise mayonnaise, just like Louis Gossett Jr. did. So I will never forget Louis Gossett Jr. as long as I have potato salad. So, Chris, what are some of your memories of Louis Gossett Jr.?
Thanks, Prof. I'm going to touch upon a lot of things you said, so my apologies to the listeners up front with respect to you already covered some of those things, but I'll just try to embellish it from my point of view a little bit. Listeners of the podcast know that The Rockford Files is one of my favorite TV shows with James Garner, and I'm laughing because he appeared on the show twice as Marcus Aurelius, nicknamed Gabby Hayes, and somewhat of a semi-recurring character where he played a silver-tongued private investigator himself. And just the nuances that he brought to his role was really, really funny and hysterical. And it just made me laugh with respect to that. The 2 episodes of The Rockford Files that he appeared on were Foul on the First Play, his first appearance, and another episode called Just Another Polish Wedding, which paired him up with Isaac Hayes, with his character Gandhi. And it could have potentially been a spinoff with Hayes's character and Isaac Hayes's character, Gandhi, as their own private investigating team, because this almost sort of felt like a test pilot with Just Another Polish Wedding, just to see the comical ways that Rockford and Marcus Aurelius use their own little methods of deception and private investigating work to find where to go to see who gets this inheritance for this accordion player who's playing a Polish wedding. Is very, very comical, and it's just hysterical. There is one classic scene where both of these characters go into a bar and they find out that it's a white supremacist bar that has the guys dressed up as Nazis. And just to see these guys try to talk their way out of that situation is very, very hysterical. And it is met with violence, and it is worth catching. If you ever see that episode, I highly recommend it. I was a fan of the Mod Squad back in the day. Gossett appeared in 3 episodes. One of the more memorable ones that I can think of off the top of my head was an episode, Can You Hear Me Out There? Was where Gossett's character played a radio DJ, and he sort of talked cryptically, which gave car thieves a little bit of a tip off as to where there could be a car for them to strike and use it that way. And it was a really, really interesting and creative episode, I thought. So I really want to give props to that one. Can you hear me out there? He appeared on an episode of The Partridge Family called Soul Club, where he was a co-owner of a Detroit nightclub with a guy played by Richard Pryor. Perhaps you've heard of him. So with respect to that. So their characters owned a Detroit nightclub, and they think they got the Temptations to play there, but actually through a mix-up, they got the Partridge Family. Now, is the Partridge Family going to play in this place where they think they're not going to get a warm reception? It's a really, really touching episode. The Invaders was a show that was not rerun too often, but I know he did an appearance there with Roscoe Lee Brown, another former of that guy, in an episode entitled The Vice. A memorable episode of Bonanza entitled The Desperado was very, very good. He also appeared on The Rookies, Good Times, Insight, The $6 Million Man, a TV movie called Don't Look Back, the Satchel Paige Story. And Professor, you mentioned the animated Batman series. There were so many animated versions of the Batman character. This is the one where I call it was just the Batman, and that's the one that has the barefoot Joker. So just that's how I differentiate that one, is where he voiced Lucius Fox. But out of all the television appearances he did, one of the more memorable ones for me was Little House on the Prairie episode, and the episode was entitled The Long Road Home. Now, Charles' crop is destroyed. What else is new? So he has to get some backbreaking work along with Victor French's character, Mr. Edwards, where they have to traverse. They got to move. They get into a freight business where they got to move some bottles of nitroglycerin. And Richard Jackal, another great character actor, is paired with Gossett's character, and Jackal's character is a racist. He says, I can't work with this guy. There's going to be no way. He says, well, you can go back but then you won't be paid. But Jackal's character really needs the money. So they force him embark on this, and they traverse and try to move the nitroglycerin from point A to point B. And it just, with any misstep, with any little harrowing bump or everything else, the whole thing can go up. And with respect to that, there are some moments where there's a lot of tension between the two characters. A lot of pride happens here. All the while, Gossett's character, named Henry Hill, not to be confused with the mobster guy, but it just so happens his name is Henry Hill in this episode, just kind of lets it play out, and he contains any hatred or any of his own personal feelings with respect to Jackal's character, keeps it to himself. He's more or less used to it. And Charles Ingalls, Michael Landon's character, goes, well, geez, do you need the money this bad to do all this stuff and endure all this hatred and abuse, much less transport this dangerous, volatile liquid that you could potentially kill you with every foot you traverse across this rough countryside? And he says, yeah, my family's broke. I need the money, and I have a lot of mouths to feed, and here I am. So at the end of the episode, after everything and all the hardships they endure, they decide, you know what, we're going to take the train back, and we're not going to sit outside with the rest of the workers on the train. We're going to use our money, and we're actually going to sit in a nice car, sit in a nice seat, and get a nice, meal and everything here. We're going to enjoy the comforts of this train on a nice cushioned seat. But when they force them to sit down, the conductor says, nope. Being African American, Gossett cannot sit in this car. He's going to have to sit outside. So Ingalls joins them. Edwards joins them. They say, hey, well, if he's not good enough to sit here, neither are we. So we're going to sit outside with him. Then you think, well, what's Jackal's character going to do? And he says, you know what? They wait a beat, and then all of a sudden they're all kind of getting their places to sit outside on the train. And then here's Jackal's character. And then he goes, well, didn't you want to sit inside? No, they kicked me out too. They found out I was Irish, and they all have a hearty laugh, and that's how the episode ends and everything like that. Memorable episode with respect to that. Professor, I think I liked An Officer and a Gentleman more than you did. I remember the theme song to that, Jennifer Warnes, and who's the other guy? I forget, but a memorable song, Up Where We Belong, a great song with respect to that. Deborah Winger, Richard Gere, marvelous movie. I like both of those actors. Really, really good stuff there. I think David Keith in the supporting role, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Touching movie. And Gossett's character, just memorable because just to see all the stuff that Gossett puts Gere's character through, is just really wrenching with respect to that. There's a memorable scene where Gere is on the obstacle course. He helps one of the women who falls back. He helps her up and gets over there. All the hardships that he endures using a toothbrush to clean the floor and everything with respect to that, and just getting his thing. And even there's one scene too where they're in the boxing ring too. He says, you want to take us away to meet? Well, here, we'll do it together. So Officer and a Gentleman, really, really good movie. Good memorable performances by all the central cast with Gossett and Gere and Deborah Winger, all the stuff like that. Joe Cocker was the guy I couldn't remember too, with Jennifer Warnes doing the theme song with Up Where We Belong with respect to that. And hey, Professor, back in the day, there were a lot more things to do. There were a lot more time on our hands. There were no streaming services to speak of, and cable TV was sort of a tough putt. So you rented movies back in the 80s and 90s and sort of respect to that. And one of the popular movies to rent was Iron Eagle. And there you had Louis Gossett Jr. as Chappie. And Iron Eagle, I'm trying to think, what would you say the plot of this? I think there was like a teen boy, and I think he loses his dad, and then Gossett is sort of like his de facto mentor, and then they do some type of rescue mission where these two guys team up, and it's really, really good. And if it makes a little bit of money, and if it gets a little bit of good word of mouth, there's going to be a sequel and another one and another one. What did you say? There was like 5 of these things. So like respect to that. So these were somewhat popular in its day. They probably didn't get good reviews, but nonetheless, they were popular enough to keep on churning out these sequels. And I remember those being really popular movie rentals back in the day, the Iron Eagle series. So that's another thing that I remember Louis Gossett Jr. for. Really, really talented actor, be it the comedic roles, the drama roles, the TV and the movie. Great, phenomenal actor, Louis Gossett Jr.
You bet he is. So this week's That Guy in That Show is Louis Gossett Jr.
He's that guy,